Josh, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are y'all?
We're good, man.
We are doing well up here, dude. It's a very different feeling to be at Halloween and know that the Commanders are a very legitimate playoff team. As somebody that covers the whole NFL, what have you seen from this Washington team?
Well, I mean, I've been as surprised as anybody. Frankly, I don't think anybody expected, 6-2 Jayden Daniels playing as well as he has, as quickly as he has. Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury hires got a lot of, people looking down their nose at him how many months ago now? And, suddenly they look very smart. I think Dan Quinn is a guy who was a good fit from a confidence, get some juice back into the building for a franchise that needed it. And Cliff, we can all go back through Cliff's record and we can pick apart the way seasons have finished, but right now they look really good.
It's really interesting you bring that up because you're totally right. I mean, people in town, when the hire got made, everybody was screaming about Ben Johnson. Obviously that went sideways. They go with DQ. And I know Ron Rivera. I like Ron Rivera as a person, but it's almost like Dan Quinn is delivering what Ron said he would. It's so easy to throw around the culture word, but it's kind of happening now.
Yeah.
And I think DC fans and maybe across the country folks were like, you can't do this retread stuff, but DQ seems to be a different type of cat, man.
I think he's done what they expect players to do. If something gets stale, they expect the player to reinvent themselves. I think both he and Cliff did that.
Yeah, I think Dan has learned some lessons, but I also think this is who Dan was in Atlanta. I mean, Dan got a lot of juice flowing in Atlanta. The Falcons, we all remember 28-3, but he got the Falcons to the Super Bowl and to the verge of winning a Super Bowl. Not a lot of people have done that. He did a good job for a time in Atlanta. And then, after 28-3 and then the next season, then it starts to, kind of come apart. And then all of a sudden the Coach Bro stuff and the slogans on the T-shirts and all that stuff doesn't go over as well. That stuff wears thin after 5 or 6, 7 years. But in the beginning, when you're coming in the building and you're firing everybody up and you believe in everybody and you're giving some players who have kind of been kicked around for a while some confidence, that's bound to help.
I agree. And then you add in a rookie quarterback that's taking the league by storm. What do you make of – I mean, I know you cover the Falcons and you're all over the league, but of Jayden Daniels so far?
He's been fantastic. I mean, I think that he and Cliff have been a perfect marriage. There were a lot of people, if you go back and look, not a lot of people, but there were enough smart people who said, yes, Caleb Williams is going to be the number one pick, but don't forget about Jayden Daniels. But we believe that Jayden Daniels could be the best of this bunch for X, Y, and Z, one of which being he's played a lot of football, one of which being he's NFL ready on the deep ball. He's got something that we know he can do this. We know that this works in NFL systems. And if they'll give him a chance to sort of, let that be his comfort zone and then build everything else around it, he can have success and he can maybe have early success. Nobody expected it to be this early, though.
Nah, nobody expected this early. But when he was coming out, it was all the knocks on he takes a lot of sacks. I haven't seen that so far this season.
He's done a really good job of protecting himself, and he did take – it was not even so much that he took a ton of sacks in his college career, but he took so many just spectacular sacks. I mean, he just got – more than anybody I can remember recently, he got blown up several times, and you worried that
the Ole Miss hit.
Yeah, I mean, you worried that just one of those in the league, and that would be the end of his season. And that's a legitimate worry. But he has done a really good job of protecting himself. They put him in position to protect himself. And so far, knock on wood, I mean, nobody except maybe Dallas fans, want to see this kid's season stop short. I mean, this is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Actually, I just saw this from a dude named Ryan Cooley is where I'm seeing it. He does data for PFF. there was all this talk about Jayden's pressure to sack ratio coming out of college. Right now, his pressure to sack percentage is 17.5%. That's 11th best in the NFL. So very far from a concern.
Yeah.
Dude, Josh, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the NFC as a whole. I'm looking at your power rankings from The Athletic this week. You go Lions 1, and there's an easy case to be made. Green Bay, you go Lions, KC, Green Bay, Buffalo, Houston, Baltimore, then Washington. As we kind of get closer to these, not playoffs, but like at least seeding and getting some semblance of what's going to happen, Washington's got a big NFC East matchup this week. Obviously, winning the division is paramount because then you're at least getting one home playoff game, probably two. How do you think the NFC East race is going to stack up between Washington and likely the Eagles?
Well, I think that'll be fascinating, but I think that Washington, I mean, right now I feel very comfortable telling you that the Lions are the best team in the NFC. I don't have that same comfort level at number 2. I mean, I could make an argument for the Packers as I have, but I could argue that the Commanders are in there. I could argue that if the Eagles have really figured things out on offense and given, have figured out a way to put Jalen Hurts in a better situation to have more success, they could be that number 2 team. That is still a stacked roster. I'll be fascinated to see who sort of settles as the next best in the NFC once we get to the playoffs. It absolutely could be Washington.
Well, if Washington gets another win too, does that kind of change things a little bit for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
In the next 2 weeks, if they're sitting at 8-2.
Well, dude, especially with the Steelers looming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, here's the thing for the Commanders, from my perspective. You've got to start thinking about playoffs. I mean, the season, the complexion of this season has changed. I think you need to not, yes, each week is its own season, blah, 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 blah. You want to get yourself in the best position you can, et cetera, et cetera. But this team now, I think, is going to be judged on what happens late in the season, not what happens in this middle point. You got to get through, but you got to keep getting better and put yourself in position to capitalize, because as much as you think Jayden Daniels is going to transform this team for the next 15 years, look how great things are going to be. We've seen cases where that doesn't materialize. You've got to strike when you've got opportunity, and they've got opportunity this season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't think it necessarily means with the trade deadline looming in 5 days or whatever that you have to get super aggressive, but the focus does need to be on tightening up things now, right? Like,
yes,
we've been talking a lot because Washington's red zone efficiency has been a problem. And I'm not suggesting that it's a do or die, fix this or you won't win another game. But like, if you want to play deep into January, those are the kind of things that you got to fix up.
Right. And why not? It's been a long time since you've been in this position. Why not, see what you can do?
For sure. When you look ahead to the trade deadline, do you think there's been a lot of activity already? Is there another big name out there that you think could get moved? And do you see Washington making any moves?
Yeah.
I don't. I couldn't tell you, if the Commanders don't strike me as the obvious target. I think for everybody in the NFC, the obvious concern is that Detroit is going to make a big move for a pass rusher to replace Aiden Hutchinson. I think that,
sure.
If you're Washington, do you feel like you need to make a move to keep pace with something like that? I don't know if they're quite in that spot yet, but for me, the pass rushers moving is probably, we've seen the wide receiver run. That's probably about over. I think you'll see some pass rushers change hands. Cleveland may be offloading Zadarius Smith. I don't think they'll offload Myles Garrett, but we'll see. But I think if you're Washington or anybody else who fashions himself as an NFC contender, you hope that the Lions don't get a deal done for somebody who's an elite edge player.
Sure.
Yeah. And who you think, other than somebody from Cleveland, because both of those guys people would think would be obvious. Anybody else out there that seems to be Somebody that they will try and go after?
Well, this doesn't necessarily work for the Commanders because I'm not sure about, how willing the Giants would be to trade in the division. But I wonder there, not a Dexter Lawrence, obviously, they're holding on to him, but a guy like Azeez Ojulari, just a guy who can make a difference on the fringes. That for me is a guy that I wonder if he finds a new home.
Dude, we talked about the Giants as a potential seller yesterday, and what does that mean? Like, it just gets harder and harder for me to see that ownership's really going to stick with their current leadership to allow them to go through the rebuild when, whether it was begrudgingly or not, they paid Daniel Jones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last one for me. You're in Atlanta. You're covering the Falcons. That team all of a sudden looks to be on the inside track to win the division. They're 5-3, playing some decent football. What do the Falcons have this year?
They have a little bit of hope. They're on the next rung down from the Commanders. This is not a team. I don't think in Atlanta that is an NFC contender. Is an NFC championship game contender. They've certainly put themselves in position in the NFC South. But Atlanta's got 6 sacks. You talk about things that put a cap on your competitiveness down the road. Atlanta's got 6 sacks this season. They're on pace to have the second fewest sacks in the NFL since at least
8 games. Have they had a bye?
No, they have 6 sacks. They're averaging 0.75 sacks a game. Baker Mayfield threw 50 passes last week and did not get touched. Not only just didn't get sacked, they didn't get a quarterback hit. So this is still a team in Atlanta that has got some flaws that will eventually be fatal. But the Kirk Cousins experience has been what they thought it would be. He has made the offense a professional offense. They have been fun to watch, which they haven't been in a while. Probably going back to when Dan Quinn was the head coach here. So Atlanta fans are happy with what they've got. I don't expect them to be big movers at the trade deadline because I don't think that they are quite in the realm with the teams that we've been talking about in the NFC right now.
Wow. That is really, really poor production getting after the quarterback.
6 sacks.
Hey, Josh, thanks for your time, man. Really enjoyed it. We'll have to do it again.
Thanks for having me.